Hello. Now, we've heard a lot tonight about not fitting in, and I'll bet that no matter how you identify, you have also been in a situation where you don't fit in. I'll also bet that you've been in a situation where you felt like you didn't fit in. It's okay not to fit in, but when you don't feel like you fit in, that can be at best uncomfortable, and at worst, intensely lonely and even traumatic. The good news is that these feelings of loneliness and isolation can be overcome if you dare to come face to face with who you really are. Now, I think most people would agree that growing up gay in Perth, Western Australia, in the 80s and 90s would probably qualify you for someone that probably felt lonely and isolated. That's certainly true for me. But I had an extra reason to feel that way. Not only was I gay, I was also Mormon. Could you tell? It was the tie, wasn't it? Now, the time when I was really forced to confront who I was actually came when I was a Mormon missionary. Hello, my name is Elder McSweeney. I was going to write a musical about it, but I just couldn't find the right rhyme for McSweeney. So there I was, out, knocking on doors.
I'm a Mormon missionary, and I am spreading the gospel. This is where I'm meant to be, and this is where God wants me to be. But do I really belong here? I'm not like the other missionaries. I keep having thoughts and feelings that missionaries are not supposed to have. Up until now, I've been keeping it all secret. If I told anyone, I'd probably get sent home in shame. But it's getting harder and harder to keep it bottled up inside. I feel like I'm going to burst if I don't say something. I need to come clean. I need to tell the truth.
All right, I'll confess. Of course, as you figured out, what I was finally coming to terms with was the fact that I was an atheist. You probably thought it would have been hard to be gay and Mormon at the same time, right? I can tell you that is nothing compared to trying to be atheist and Mormon at the same time. Those last few months of my mission, they were absolutely hell. I was completely alone. There was no one I could talk to. I couldn't talk to my mission companion about how I was feeling because, well, he was just way too hot, So I couldn't wait to get home and get out of there. But when I did finally get home and rip off this badge for the last time, it felt like I was actually giving up my identity. I had always been Mormon. I didn't know how not to be Mormon. What did I think about the purpose of life? What did I think about what it meant to be a good moral person? Hell, did I even believe in morality anymore? Without the church telling me what to think and believe, I started to wonder what the point of anything was anymore. Now, some of you may recognize the symptoms. This is what is called my first existential crisis. But to stave off the growing sense of nihilism, I decided to focus on my career. Now, music had always been part of my life. I had taken lessons as a young kid and was reasonably good at it, so it made sense that this would be a viable career path for me. Now, I also really love classical music. And the Romantic era, in particular, is, as they say, my jam. For example, Chopin, Tchaikovsky, and, of course, Rachmaninoff.
Playing the piano is wonderful. It brings me so much joy. But I'm still not at ease with myself, and I can't focus on my music when I'm still not being true to myself. I need to start living more in tune, more in harmony with who I really am. And who am I, really? I need to be honest with myself. No, not just myself. I need to be honest with everyone. Alright? It is time. I'm going to come out and say it.
I am a scientist. Isn't it strange just how closely we associate our sense of identities with our professions? I mean, why couldn't it be enough, for example, that I was just someone that happened to like playing the piano and someone that also just happened to like doing maths? But it didn't work that way for me. I had started to see myself as a scientist, and my evolving sense of identity had now started to compel me to change the rather arbitrary thing of what I got paid to do to match my self-image. So, back to the drawing board. Gave up my burgeoning career in music and went back to uni to study astronomy. Any of you who have had this kind of opportunity to reinvent yourselves will know that it can be a surreal experience. Whenever you change the way that you present on the outside, it takes time to get used to. And that's true even if there isn't emotional baggage coming along for the ride. I'm going to take my tie off now. That's my music tie. So now, I teach and do research at Curtin University as an astronomer. And I don't know, maybe it's the nature of my work that keeps the existential crises at bay. I mean, I get to study the mysteries of the universe. I study neutron stars, which have the mass of a sun packed into a ball the size of no bigger than a small city, spinning hundreds of times a second, surrounded by turbulent relativistic plasmas that boil and bubble, shooting out intense radio beams that sweep across thousands of light years across the galaxy. The universe is full of amazing, incredible things, and I have the privilege of... All right already, congratulations, you've reached career enlightenment. Hurry up and get to the point. They want to hear about your other identity. My other identity? You know, your other identity, who you are underneath your beliefs, underneath your career choices. Oh, you're talking about this identity. That was graceful. This is as far as I go. I don't think you paid quite that much for your tickets. Now, you would have thought that coming out twice already in my life, coming out as an atheist and coming out as a scientist, that I would have been so well practiced at coming out that coming out as gay would have been no big deal. Wrong. But why was it different? What made it different? Well, when I was Mormon, I really was Mormon. And the time period between realizing that I was an atheist and then actually changing my life to suit, that time period was probably about, let's say, at most 1.5 years. An intense 1.5 years, but still only 1.5 years. Now, when I was a musician, of course, I really was a musician, and the time period between changing my mind about what I wanted to do for a living and then actually taking steps to make that change, that was probably at 2 years at the most. But when I was straight, of course, I was never straight. And actually, I don't know how common this is, but I knew I was gay well before puberty. So from the age of about 7, when I recognized what I was, even if I didn't know the name for it, between then and coming out at the age of 27-ish, that is 2 whole decades to feel different and out of place and lonely and isolated. After I came out, it still took, actually, another several years before I could finally unlearn some of the values and attitudes that I had grown up with, which seemed innocent enough at the time, but which I realized after the fact were actually preventing me from having and maintaining healthy relationships. And for me, the big one was actually about what the nature of love is. You see, Mormons put love up on a pedestal. God's love is unconditional, and we are commanded to love one another as God loves us. Tall order. But also Mormons teach that the closest thing that you can come to perfect happiness in this life is the love experienced between a married man and woman. So certainly none of the things that I felt growing up could possibly have had anything to do with love. They had some other kind of name: lust, temptation, or perhaps that most insidious of euphemisms, same-sex attraction. Certainly not love. Oh, no. If only I had realized then that actually all those things that I experienced growing up, those feelings I had, were part of a normal, natural process, and if nurtured in the right way, would make me just as eligible to giving love and receiving love as anyone else on the planet. It was a long lesson to learn. And it was an amazing day when I finally felt ready to offer my heart to someone who is in the audience here tonight. As I look back on my several coming out experiences as I see them, I can actually start to take stock of how they've changed me as a person. For example, I know what it's like to hold dogmatically onto a belief, only to decide later that I was completely wrong. So now, I find that I'm less argumentative. I'm more willing to entertain the possibility that I might be wrong again. And maybe I'm the one that needs to change. I also know what it's like to have made plans for my life, only for life to make other plans. Now, as a result, I find it slightly easier to judge other people's life choices less quickly. And I know what it's like to feel like there's something wrong with my capacity to love. And now that I've learned, finally, that there was never anything wrong with my capacity to love, I have more faith in other people's capacity to love. I have more faith in other people generally. I believe that people are good, that they want love in their lives. They want to love and to be loved, just like I need to love and to be loved. And what all of these life lessons have in common is that I've realized in hindsight that I'm more like everybody else than I used to think. Now, I'm certainly not perfect at it, but this recognition actually helps me when I'm talking to people. It makes it so that I'm more willing to pay attention to the things that we have in common instead of getting distracted or put off by our differences. You might be thinking, listening to me talk, who is this chump anyway? We are nothing alike, right? I don't know who you are. Certainly I don't know anything about you. I don't know what religion you subscribe to. I don't know what job you have. I may not even know what your sexual or gender identity is. But actually, I do know you. I do know you because you are just like me. You're someone for whom life hasn't gone perfectly. You're someone who believes in something. You're someone who wants to achieve something meaningful in your life. And you're someone perhaps that is looking for inner peace on a daily basis. You have dreams and goals and ambitions and fears and idiosyncrasies. And you have a unique story to tell. And you have a unique way of looking at the world. In fact, you are unique. Just like me. Now, this is not a game of we're all unique, but some are more unique than others. I mean, I know that my story sounds unique. I'm willing to bet you probably don't know many other ex-Mormon, piano-playing, gay astronomers. But those are just unimportant details. The feeling of uniqueness that you may have, that might be the thing that sometimes makes you feel lonely. Ironically, that's the one thing that we all have in common. And we all wear layer upon layer of identity. Yeah? We're all tearing about madly trying to find the set of identities that suits us the best, that fits us the best. And that is a good thing to do. But your most fundamental identity is underneath your beliefs, underneath your profession, underneath even your sexual and gender identities, is your identity as a human person. If you are willing to believe that deep down we really are all the same, then you'll never feel lonely ever again. Thank you.